All right, good morning. Welcome everybody to this meeting of Development Transportation for June 23rd. I will call the meeting to order. I just realized we have so many people in the room who've never actually met each other because, COVID and WebEx and all the rest of it. And we have Shane joining us from Abbey PD. Welcome as well. So I think I'll just go around the room just before we get started and have everybody just say who they are, starting with this lady at the front.
I'm Carol Pakecow, Fraser Valley Brain Injuries.
Great.
Rob Quiring with IQ Engineering.
Thank you.
Ken Friesen with Ridgepoint Homes and CHPA Fraser Valley.
Paul Penner, Remax Lidloke. I'm just filling in on behalf of Kevin Miro for the Chamber of Commerce. So.
Great. And the two ladies off on the side?
Oh, sorry. Robin Charles, I'm the Deputy City Clerk. And Tammy Catola.
Start hanging out back here behind me.
Ross Siemens to make sure that Councillor Blue was doing her job.
We're good.
Back here, I'm Blake Collins. I'm the Director of Development Planning.
Rob Isaac, I'm the General Manager of Engineering.
Pretty Beltry, I am the Director of Roads and Facilities. Trevor Welch, I'm the Director of Building Permits.
Awesome. That's terrific. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. It's nice to see everybody, and we understand summer has arrived, so that's also good. It looks like it might be cooperating today. First up is adoption of one set of minutes from April 8th. Can I have somebody move adoption, please? Thank you, Rob. Second, Ken. Any discussion? No, I'll call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. Everybody's good. So thank you very much. Our report today is the building permit process review with Trevor. Is somebody going to introduce that or straight up to Trevor?
Straight up to Trevor.
Okay, awesome.
Check.
Hey.
It works. Excellent. Good morning. We're here before you today seeking feedback regarding the building and finalizing the building permit process review based off of Council's strategic priorities. In conducting our complete review of the building permit process, we identified a number of objectives that we want to achieve while we were undertaking the review, which focused on increasing efficiency by identifying opportunities to reduce permit wait times, utilizing technology to optimize the effective use of our current resources, reduce unnecessary tasks and redundancies in our processes, as well as increase customer service and permit process. In looking at the building permit review, we also examined the recent history and milestones that have occurred that would be impactful on the volume of the building permit work. The current workloads that we have can be traced back to 2016 when the current OCP was adopted. In 2017, and working towards achieving the OCP, the Plan for 200K initiative was launched. 2018 was the first time that the city's value of construction and building permits exceeded 500 million, peaking in 2019 at 565 million. This was considered a substantial milestone and accomplishment. In January of 2019, under the strategic plan, it was identified that a review of the development approvals, specifically the building permit approvals, would be of value to support the 200K initiative. Based upon the strategic priority, staff engaged Nielsen Strategies to review the building permit process. In July of 2020, staff received the final version of the Nielsen Strategies report, which has been included in the report today. Since the submission of the Nielsen staff report, focus has been adapted to the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as with new staff starting, we wanted the opportunity for staff to review and provide input into the Nielsen review. This has resulted in the attachment A to the report, the building permit process review and modernization strategy being completed in early 2022, which is presented for feedback today. In examining the business statistics with building permits, there are a myriad of utilized that typically, the typical starting point is reviewing the number of building permit applications that are being made. This helps in demonstrating the volume of work that is incoming. While there hasn't been significant variations in the number of applications received, there has been a significant increase in 2021 to a historic high of 1,640 building permit applications, showing a recovery in application volumes from the pandemic. When examining the number of issued building permits as compared to the number of applications received, this can demonstrate the volume and trends in the number of files being processed. It's a good indicator for us in determining if building permit wait times will reduce when the number of permits being issued is outpacing the number of applications being received. The number of applications that have been issued has been fairly consistent over the past 5 years, with the exception of 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In each of the 5 previous years, the number of applications we have received has outpaced the number of applications we've been able to issue. While comparing the number of permit applications to the number of issued permits provides context on the building permit wait times and volume, it does not provide complete context on the complexity of the work involved in a building permit review. To examine the complexity and time invested in the volume of work, the building permit construction value is a key indicator for this. The current 5-year average of construction value is $476 million per year. This represents a 126% increase on the previous 5-year cycle, which was an average of 211. Our high water mark was noted earlier as 2019, and we most recently continue with our recovery from the pandemic with $427 million issued in 2021. As the application submissions have continued to outpace the issued permits and the complexity and size of the projects has increased, the building permit wait times have increased over the past 5 years as well. The average building permit wait time from the date of application to the first comprehensive review has increased from 7 weeks in 2017 for multifamily projects to 20 weeks in 2022. For residential single-family homes, the average wait time has increased from 6.5 weeks in 2017 to 16 weeks in 2022. The 5-year average in building permit wait times is at 10 weeks for multifamily, 12 weeks for single-family residential projects. In conversation with other local jurisdictions, we are not alone in experiencing increases in our wait times. It's intended that the review and action items will be implemented to decrease the building permit wait times and improve our customers' experience in obtaining their permits. Through the building permit process review, we've engaged with the Canadian Home Builders Association of the Fraser Valley Builders, not affiliated with the CHBA from the South Asian community, the Council's Development Transportation Advisory Committee here today, as well as internal stakeholders from the information technology, continuous improvements, as well as our engineer partners in engineering. Some of the improvements we've looked to make while we've been conducting this review is implementing the adoption of this certified professional program, implementing pre-screens of our permit applications to ensure completeness and quality to enable a quicker, detailed review, revised and updated application forms and checklists, and reducing some administrative and redundant administrative tasks that we come across, for example, printing multiple permit cards for files and eliminating some of those. Based upon our comprehensive review, we've identified 3 areas of opportunities for the city to achieve the objectives of the building permit process review. The 3 areas are themed at modernizing the current use of our technology, creating and implementing ongoing and intentional business evaluation and improvements, and creating customer-centric resources. When we're examining our building permit process, it's currently focused primarily on paper-based systems, where all of staff work is managed, documented, and recorded on paper. The city does currently utilize Amanda software, which is used to track permits by assigning permit numbers and identifying which stage the permit is in. As identified in the Nielsen Strategies Report and the staff review, there is significant opportunity to better leverage the Amanda software to increase our efficiency. Some of the items where we can see benefit are having our work managed and driven and documented within the Amanda software, implementation of automated referrals and notifications within the city. For example, one piece that we've just recently initiated is when a building permit is assigned to a file manager for the review, an automatic email is sent off to the building permit applicant to advise them of this so that they have a proactive communication contact that the file has been assigned and there's progress forward. Online portals for plumbing and fire sprinkler permit applications, as well adopting mobile inspections, as well direct integrations to a document management system from our Amanda software. When we're reviewing our historical approach to evaluating and improving upon our business processes, it's been identified that it's been primarily reactive, at times ad hoc, and usually off of the side of staff's desk. To establish ongoing and consistent improvements in our business process while ensuring a collaborative problem solving to avoid unintended consequences, creating a business improvement team within the building permits division is important. The business improvement team engages staff members from each of the sections within the division as subject matter experts to provide their expertise in the development of improvements for efficiency and in the future to create innovation. The division is developing and refining forecasting tools for upcoming building permits and applying these forecasting tools to staff capacities. When capacity challenges are identified, it is intended that requests would be made through the annual budget process if it is identified that resources are needed to address increased forecasts of work. It's also sought to establish ongoing and continuous ways to evaluate our service delivery by engaging in customer feedback surveys and exploring additional ways to incorporate into continuous and ongoing improvements into our business operation. Creation of the business improvement team and forecasting tools are anticipated to establish the framework to make the division adaptable to changes and increases in volumes and complexity of work. As part of the business evaluation, our current organization layout of permit reviews, permits are placed into review queues based upon the building's archetype, which results in less complex files such as interior home renovations and tenant improvements being placed in the same review queue as more complex files such as home additions and new complex buildings, which usually take typically additional time to review. While staff do try to move less complex applications through the reviews at a quicker pace, it's usually done ad hoc without dedicated staff focusing on those less complex applications. Some municipalities have adopted programs such as easy permits or fast track options, as highlighted in the Nielsen report. One of the key points of an easy permit or fast track process is that there are dedicated staff working solely on those applications. A challenge with these programs, however, is that the labeling of them does potentially provide the wrong connotation to applicants, as there are still varying levels of complexity and wait times. With that being said, there is definitely value in dedicating staff to focus on less complex applications to move at a quicker pace. One of the opportunities we've identified is to have dedicated staff focus on those less complex files. We would look to expand our current 2 plan review streams into 4 plan review streams by including the complexity of the work in determining those plan review streams. The plan review streams would be split into 4, with the renovation and alteration permits being in the first stream. The second stream would focus on new construction and additions of homes, and the third stream focusing on tenant improvements, with the final 4th stream being new constructions and addition of complex buildings. Each of these review streams would be intended to have their own targeted permit review queue times. So when we're looking at our renovation alteration permits, we would be targeting a 3-week from the initial application to the first comprehensive review. For our new construction and addition for homes, 5 weeks. For our tenant improvements, we'd be looking at 4 weeks. And new construction and additions to complex buildings, we'd be looking at 6 weeks as our targeted review times. If a plan review stream is processing files quicker than its targets, staff would also be able to shift between teams to assist other areas of the business. So for example, if our renovation and alterations group is hitting their targeted review times and the new construction addition of homes is not hitting their targets, we can shift staff resources over to address achieving those targets. The benefit, as an example, for a resident wanting to do a minor renovation, such as removing a wall to dining or adding a secondary suite, is they'll not need to wait in the same queue as someone waiting for an entirely new. On the other side of things, for business owners trying to start up their new business and do a tenant improvement, they're not necessarily going to have to wait for the new 6-story building down the street to be reviewed first. Adapting to these new review streams to include the complexity of work is also scalable. In the future, there are additional opportunities to increase for more review streams, such as for subdivision-specific review streams, or even certified professional project specific review streams. In reviewing our customer resources, we currently do have some resources available on our website, such as building permit wait times, application and checklist forms, and the ability to check your permit status. While the information and forms are detailed and useful resources, they are limited as they can be quite overwhelming for residents novice builders, as well as new business owners. Restructuring the city's resources to focus on the customer's viewpoints would be beneficial, provide customer-specific journeys to support our customers in achieving the permits that they need for what the work they're proposing to do. There's also opportunity when we're updating Amanda to provide a clearer picture to our customers of where their applications are in the process. For example, up on the screen, there is our current layout of checking your building permit status on our website. However, the current view of that is the back end of our Amanda system, which doesn't quite make the most sense from a customer's perspective. And we would look to, through our update of Amanda, to reconfigure that in a way that makes sense for the customer as well. An additional opportunity which the city has done historically is hosting in-person builder seminars. During the COVID-19 pandemic, this was not possible due to the health regulations. The city has tried to offer alternate online webinars, such as last summer's Energy Step Code webinar series, but the feedback we've heard is that they are not as beneficial as the in-person sessions. The city, as of yesterday, has started hosting in-person builder workshops again, focused on the Energy Step Code, and we will be looking to expand upon these again. Last year, the city was awarded local development CM, which was awarded a $500,000 grant, which is intended to be utilized for the digital development delivery.
If you can say that 3 times fast.
Exactly. That's why we do prefer the E3 project, as we actually refer to it as, is going to be utilized to address some of the action items that have been identified already that were under the improvement theme of modernizing technologies. So this includes reconfiguring our building permit folders in the software to have the technology drive our work and reduce the complexity within our processes. Create a direct configuration to a document management software. Implement mobile inspection technology and online plumbing and fire sprinkler permit applications. Phase 1 of the D3 project kicked off on May 31st. We have a deadline of completion for the project of August of 2023.
Awesome.
Back.
Thank
Sorry.
you very much.
We also have the recommendation, so I didn't know if we wanted to jump to that.
Yeah, we'll do the recommendation first, and then we'll open it up for questions. So can I have somebody move to receive the report? Thank you, Rob. Second, Ken. Open it up for questions. See, Mark has joined us too. I didn't see you there before now. Welcome. Yes, go ahead. Oh,
I think
you're
he's just
saying
doing
hello? Good, good. Yeah, Rob, go ahead.
First comment, thank you for all your hard work in this the massive task. I think I've been in this industry for 25 years in this town, so I've seen a lot of different things happen over the years. Different programs tried, stopped. I think the 4 streams is a great idea. I have clients that are applying for a sign permit. That it's a simple fascia sign on the side of a building that probably would take a plan checker an hour to review, issue a permit, who gets stuck behind the 6-story condo. So I think that's a great to try to streamline them into easy to complex. And yes, the big buildings are getting more and more complex, especially with all the Energy Step Code. So that's a great initiative to streamline people into the 4 categories. And same with the tenant improvement stream, because you're going to have someone that maybe wants to start a daycare and goes into a blank building, and it's a 6-month wait, right? Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, rent probably might kick in at month 2 or 3, and now this person that wants to start a business and maybe an empty office space is now having to pay rent on an empty space while they're waiting. And so whatever you can do there is fantastic if you can speed up that process. Because a lot of those tenant improvements are in existence. So you're dealing with a known entity, a known building. So that's I think that would really kickstart and make a lot more people happy. I also get phone calls at my office of, I want to do this renovation to my house. And my first question is, oh, when are you applying for your permit? I kind of say it facetiously because a lot of times I know the answer will be, oh, we're not applying for a permit. Oh, I say, why aren't you applying for a permit? Oh, I don't want to wait 4 months. I want to do it now. My carpenter can do it on Monday. So I think if you can streamline that, speed up that process, then it might be as simple as removing the wall or something, but they should still get a permit. And so I think if you can speed that process, that you would probably get a lot of more of those people out of that black market doing renovations without permits. Yeah, so yeah, good work on that to streamline it.
So yeah, absolutely, fantastic initiative. The TI piece is such a bottleneck when it comes to businesses transitioning from one location to another. They come in, it's like, hey, Paul, find us some lease space. When do you have to be out? Oh, we've got some time. We have to be out in like 2 months. It's like, you don't have time. We can't even get you any TIs done in that time period. So a lot of these people, if you look at the structure of the lease, typically, I mean, 2 months is a short timeline, but typically they have to give notice within 6 months of the end of the lease is a kind of a common trigger date. So if you've got 6 months for that, and then you need some TIs in the new place, the clock's ticking and it's working against you really quick. My question is, great if you can hit those targets, but even in creating different tracks for all of these, how can you target 6 weeks as the longest timeline when right now your shortest timeline is 16 for detached or for residential?
So really what it's going to be is those technology updates as well as the modernization as well. So not only is it just creating those streams, but it's making sure that when we're looking at forecasting and looking at our capacity, that we're looking at those within those streams, so that we're looking to support those streams to hit those targeted times, as well as there is a lot of opportunity as we're modernizing our technology and the use of it, that there's going to be some opportunities for a lot of time savings through that as well. So as we get our streams established, we'll see them pick up and I think move a bit quicker. Because you're also, when you're focusing on a number of tenant improvements, you usually get a bit quicker at doing each one of those as well. And there's time savings there as well versus you're looking at a 6-story and then jumping onto a TI and then back to a 6-story. So you're become very specialized in that primary work that you're doing too. So we anticipate some time savings there, plus the modernizing of technology and making sure we've got the capacity there.
Any consideration of downloading some of that responsibility to the applicant? Rob to put his stamp on it and you're good to go.
I was like, no.
No, but you know, other guys, right? You can
Anybody but Rob.
you can get text out there, and if you want to bypass this line, get these consultants to sign off on the work that you're doing, and maybe you just have to come in at the last 2 weeks as opposed to that earlier process.
And we've seen that with the CP program and the adoption of that, where we're giving that greater reliance now on certified professionals. So if they have that additional designation through AIBC and EGBC, then we're able to give that additional piece where we're putting reliance on professionals.
Right.
You mentioned that might be an additional stream in the future as well.
So TIs and home rentals, that kind of thing. Like, if a guy's doing a deck at the house, does he really need to go through the full process here, or can you get somebody to sign off on that deck and say, yeah, it meets code, it's done properly, here you go?
It depends on the application, I would say. So quite often we'll have structural engineers involved on those types of projects. And for that structural sizing, we're reliant upon those professionals. We put that reliance there for the calculations, footing sizing, all of those pieces. So we have that reliance there. When we're looking at compliance for the zoning bylaw, that's currently a staff function that we have to go through and check to make sure that we're still compliant with our setbacks and our lot coverage and doing that zoning analysis. Part of the benefit of those streams, though, is when we're looking at, for example, our home renovations where that single wall is being removed, if there's an engineer stamping and signing off for the sizing of a beam, if it's a load-bearing wall, we're not having to do those additional zoning calculations.
Right.
So that's in that separate stream, is to be able to have that go through much quicker. So in those scenarios where we are reliant upon the professionals and we're not having to do those extra steps, we can have it flow through the process much quicker.
Yeah, I've got a few things and yeah, Trevor, definitely well done presentation, and we've already worked together with you a little bit in consultation, and you've definitely done a lot of work there. I can see a lot of improvements that would be made kind of with all these initiatives, but a few things that we've chatted about before, I'll kind of bring up again, is kind of the communication piece and the benchmarking there with staff. Like, is there any, could you elaborate a little bit more on what kind of plans you had to put in place to kind of help? Like, you have all these targets that you want to hit for building permit wait times, but staffing is a large component of that there too, and they have a certain amount of applications that they have to get through in a day. What does that look like there with kind of setting up some sort of benchmarks or some sort of objectives and targets for them to hit every day or every week or month, or like, what does that kind of look like?
So that would really build into our capacity forecasting tools that we've developed. Is so when we're looking at the number of files that we're looking to be able to process based off of our capacity, that'll tie directly into expectations of number of files that we would anticipate a plan reviewer to be able to on a given week, and then that goes into aggregate over the entire year to determine our capacity from there. And then monitoring how we are doing on achieving those, again, ties right back to those capacity forecasting to make sure that we're hitting the targets we need to do, and that capacity is being realized.
Okay, all right. And then as far as like communication, like you mentioned, there's already a few things that are being put in place right now with notifying people when their application is submitted, when it's been accepted as well there too. But like a few things that we've talked about is the communication sometimes between planning and building, and I won't dive too much into that because I know it's a separate entity, but is there any talk about trying to take a few things from planning into kind of building department to kind of help streamline things? Because often, like I mentioned before in our meetings there, nowadays, when we're dealing with any kind of applications that are outside of building department, whether they require an NOI for ALC land or soil deposit permits, we're right away jumping to different departments, and oftentimes that's kind of where we lose the time, and that's where the communication kind of gets lost. So like I know that you mentioned, or Mark mentioned before, there will be some work being done in planning, but is there anything else being done in the meantime?
Yes, so as part of the D3 project and addressing some of the modernization of technology, we're taking a look at our referrals of our building permits and the additional internal stakeholder reviews that we need for those. So what we're trying to do is create, with using our software, to be able to create those touch points internally to initially start mapping those out so we can see at what times are referrals being sent, and then what are we seeing those coming back to us, so that we're getting more of a collaborative interaction through City Hall, through our referrals and through our reviews, and also giving those other departments the opportunity to get those referrals very early on in the process so that they have the opportunity to review them by the time our staff are opening those files.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a few more points, but if some other people want to, that's fine.
Ted, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And this seems like a fabulous initiative. Just wonder if you could speak to the certified professional program, talking about targets, meeting targets. This seems like an opportunity to kind of have someone step in to maybe better help achieve targets.
Not clear on the question, sorry.
Sorry, could you perhaps just rephrase, Ted, just in terms of understanding what the question is around the CPs?
I just wanted to get some maybe some clarification on the certified professional program and how that may help you achieve targets.
Yes, okay, sorry, apologies. So thank you for the question. Yeah, so for the CP program, what it helps us to do with achieving the target, I think as was noted earlier, especially with a lot of our complex projects that we have coming forward, there's more and more complexity. So really in our Part 3 buildings, we are seeing more and more 6 stories with mixed occupancies, also seeing potentially different towers that are coming forward, different industrial facilities with higher level of building code complexity or engineered designs. What the CP program helps us to do is it has that higher level of designation of a professional coming in and providing that comprehensive code review and reliance for those files. So when we get those files coming in, we're not having to invest as much of the staff time in those reviews and doing that could typically on some of those files take us a week to two to review. It's boiled down to a lot shorter period of a time because we're giving that reliance to that certified professional.
Does that answer your question, Ted?
Okay, thank you. So this person is more of a code expert. Is that what you're trying to save the time?
Correct. Yeah. So they've received they've taken courses and received a designation. BC, Engineers and Geoscientists BC, as well as the Architect in BC, to receive the designation of certified professional. And then we're able to put additional reliance on them as they have specialties within complex or Part 3 buildings and the building codes themselves within those Part 3 buildings.
Okay, thank you. So it's not so much it's for dealing with complex buildings, but not necessarily someone who could step in when there is an overload at some point in time, for instance.
They are typically hired at the proponent's cost, and they are employed by the proponent for their project.
Okay, thank you.
Trevor, maybe to kind of add on that there too, like, is it even worthwhile to look at making this certified professionals program? Because it is geared mostly to Part 3 buildings. Like nothing under Part 9 is really going to go that direction at all. Is it possible to even look at kind of making that part of the building bylaw requirements there? Because then I was thinking if you have more of these Part 3 buildings, like let's face it, we have a lot more Part 3 going up right now in this town than Part 9. Right. So if we have more of those projects going up and relying more on our professionals for those projects, that's going to help take time off the staff and inspections and kind of essentially do all the things that you're trying to do there right now. Would it be any kind of consideration to think about having that CP program become part of the building bylaws themselves?
So the CP program is included in the building bylaw at this point. So we've adopted that.
Okay.
The CP program is administered and implemented by the Engineers and Geoscientists of BC as well as AIBC. So they establish the framework of the education requirements, the continuing professional development requirements for the members in those. So we've aligned with that program that's offered, which is an optional program for municipalities to enroll within. So some municipalities do not administer the CP program. We've chosen to adopt and administer that program.
Yeah, like I know from working in some other municipalities there too, like some kind of have a bit of a threshold as far as like when a CP, when they rely on the professional, right, for the whole project, at least for the majority of it, right, up until final occupancy and things like that, right? And I know that some of those municipalities, they just haven't worked into their bylaws, so it would be determined on, I guess, the size of the building, the type of building, whether it's a townhouse or a multifamily building or commercial, but I just think that that might be something to consider as well there too, because even though like right now we're seeing so much Part 3 going up, but like if Part 9 buildings continue as well and we have to have inspectors going into both fields, it's just a way to kind of free up time to kind of streamline inspections.
So Ken, are you asking, should that be a requirement versus an
Yeah.
option?
Yeah.
I maybe have a small comment on that. And I don't know how many CPs there are in the valley. Like, it's a very tough designation to get. Typically, it would be an architect.
Yeah.
Once they are registered as an architect, because they deal with Part 3 all day long, would move forward into the CP program and get that extra designation. So, but I don't know if that would be the right move to now restrict applications. What about Mr. Architect, who's been doing this every day his whole life, that doesn't have a CP designation? Now you're saying to all, and even architects, there's not that many in the valley of registered architects. And so I don't know if that would be the best route to mandate it. I think as an option, it would be, but they're expensive. Like, they're expensive to hire, and they're also booked months ahead.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And so, so I think it would just be if the CP program gets going, it would be a fast track way of getting your application faster, because a lot of the heavy legwork is done. Because these fire separations between like commercial and residential, they're complex. and exiting and all that stuff. I would guess, right? And so that would be, I'm just a wood, concrete, and steel guy, so. When I look at all the buildings that we're designing, that is probably the biggest, toughest nut to crack is fire separation, exiting, and mixed use.
Yeah.
It's really tough these
Yeah,
days.
I get that, but for sure, because I think the more that we see going up here right now, like I'd be curious to know from your perspective, like how many projects are being done right now in town that are using architects, certified architects, like CPs, right? That aren't actually under this designation, like that aren't under a CP program right now, right? Because that's a lost opportunity for them to potentially have their project probably done a little bit faster. Sure, there might be a little bit of additional cost, but that also frees up your time. You're processing things through, you're completing projects, more revenues coming through the city when projects are completed at a faster pace, right? So I get the level of complexity there too, but the way that we see it even right now, like you see it, I see it there too in our world. Like things are only getting more complicated. So we have that many more consultants on board. So if we're already kind of going that direction, anyways, like I'm not trying to make things even more unaffordable than they already are. But I'm just saying maybe that's an area that could be captured a little bit more and even kind of further to the point of fast tracking permits. Like I think the city had that a while back, right? Where you could even pay a little bit more and get over the fast track. And people would just take it and abuse it, right? But if you made that a program where it was a significant amount more, like again, I don't see the whole picture like you guys do, but maybe it's another source of revenue that helps the city pay for some of the additional improvements that you're doing. If you make that fast tracking permit application fee like a substantial one, some people will pay it, some people will just not. So.
Maybe make a comment here too. I attended the Lower Mainland Local Government Association conference last month, and this was a huge topic of conversation because getting any staff, hired municipal staff who could step in and take more complex files is virtually impossible. There's, I don't know, I think someone said 1,200 vacancies across the province, and there is more and more complex building coming because of the building code. And, you know, the issue that you've mentioned with getting the certification as well for CP, it's so challenging on all those fronts. And so, excuse me, I really applaud the technology piece and the customer-centric piece, because I think between them, you'll find through the business improvement, a lot of things that are going to make a really big difference. Like I've worked in municipalities where they've had, you know, like racks of brochures about things that were so technical that even the cover of what it said it was would like scare people away. But instead of, you know, something like how to successfully build a deck or a fence, like something that people, because that's what they want to do is build a deck or a fence, you know, tick, tick. It's something simple like that so that getting that stuff fast tracked so that these more complex ones and in turn too, you can then get your staff as they graduate up and get more competencies. That would be really helpful. So I know it's a challenge getting staffing, and I know Abbotsford is not immune to that. It's something we have struggled with a lot. And as we see our city develop with more and more complex buildings, I see more of that. So I have a question. I see Ted there too. I just have a quick question too about Amanda. So Amanda is largely a property-based system. So it knows where the property is and what we know is on it and the rest of it. But it doesn't really have anything to do with people, with customer relationships. And, you know, we know Ken, and Ken is, you know, holds this role and he sits on this committee and he's providing input, like things about the people. So you know who you're dealing with and sort of, you know, something about that that really helps with knowing, like, is this someone we've ever heard of before? Is he a big troublemaker? But you know what I mean? Like something around that would really help you as well with staff who are looking at some of these things and understanding, like, what's the history here? Has this person ever built here before? Are they familiar? Like some of that kind of stuff as well. Will the improvements to Amanda bring into that some of those? I know you've got the document management piece, but I'm wondering about the people piece of that. Will that come in as well?
So Amanda does have people records within there. So what we do are able to do and identify that's a piece that we do want to give some detail to and attention to records, is able to take an individual or company and track it as a person within the system. And then we can see from that person record or people record, what files they're potentially attached to. So we can search and see how many building permits they have pulled out on that, any other types of applications they've made within the organization that are managed through the Amanda.
I think that history is so important because you would, you know, when I hear feedback sometimes, it's not to do with this process specifically, but sometimes people will approach the building counter, and if the staff person recognizes them, they may attribute the conversation they're about to have to a different project altogether. So understanding, you know, I'm here today to do this thing and it's different than that, but they still know there are 5 other things in the hopper or whatever that might be. So no, that's very helpful. Ken, back to you, please.
Yep, thank you. So just going back to this CP function and the dealing with complex buildings and code. I think probably more often than not, these kind of projects have on their team code consultants who's already prepared an exhaustive code review of the project. I don't know if this is a required submission for Abbotsford, or if this could be useful or helpful in, again, accelerating a review of a project. But you know, it's certainly a common submission in terms of complex projects.
So we do receive code analysis on all of our complex files. That it's not a requirement to have to be done by a code consultant or typically a fire protection engineer. Usually it's done by what we've seen is by the architect, as when they're committing to the project through their letters of assurance, they're signing for a lot of those responsibilities. As was noted earlier, where we see a lot of the complexity is definitely through the through fire separation systems as well as egress systems for those buildings. So those detailed code analysis helped us to understand from the designer's perspective, where were they coming from and how are they seeing how this works within the regulations as far as the complexity of the system goes, and how do they believe it complies. And then we take a look and verify and make a decision on behalf of the city to agree, yes, this does comply. When we're looking at the CP function, the CP is doing that function for us. So the CP is taking a look at what the architect has designed for those egress systems, for those fire separation systems, and is providing us assurances that yes, this does substantially comply with the regulation. And then we give the reliance upon that CP that yes, it does for what's been proposed, versus us going through the code analysis that's been provided, analyzing that, and then making the determination. We fully rely upon the CP. So that's a bit of the difference that we see there.
So in the case where you don't, the CP would kick in the case where you don't have a code consultant on that project? Is that what would happen?
Typically speaking, a lot of the times some of the times CPs are fire protection engineers as well, the architects, or sometimes fire protection engineers that act as code consultants. So it might be that the design or the development team has hired a code consulting firm that has CPs on staff, and part of their code analysis and reporting that they're doing includes their CP services as well.
Okay, well, you're saying that some code consultants are not CP, so you wouldn't trust their report, is that it?
No, definitely not. No, they're still typically for code consultants, they're either registered architects, sometimes professional engineers, and sometimes are technicians. We still have to review and make a determination in accordance with the bylaw if the project complies, unless there's a CP, and then if there is a CP, then the reliance is given to that person with that higher designation.
Okay.
Oh, you had a question?
Yeah, one of the pieces that we really like when I talk about the real estate industry in fast tracking is that makes things cheaper, right? Time's money. The longer you're exposed, the more of a margin you want to make because you're at risk for a longer period of time. My fear is, or my reminder, I guess, would be cognizant of the fact that if you're speeding things up by bringing more consultants to the table, sorry, Rob, that offsets whatever cost saving there was in shortening the time frame. So if we're shortening the time frame by spending more money on consultants, that benefit is lost. Now, there's still other advantages of making things quicker, but when we look at the cost of putting up a single family home, you take the step code. Right now, you've got 2 extra consultants coming in with blower doors, checking during the construction process to see how airtight the structure is. Well, that's time and money because they don't just show up with a phone call. You need to book them. Meantime, you're waiting, or hopefully you can proceed with some other stuff in the meantime. But that's $1,500. They come back again, that's another $1,500. So all the way through, you're hiring consultants. That pushes up the cost of the finished product. And as a realtor, I'm constantly bombarded by provincial politicians, not municipal so much, but provincial politicians and federal that are saying realtors are the cause of expensive housing. Well, this is one of the things that pushes up the cost of housing is what's required to get from a raw piece of land to a finished product. And a lot of consultant fees build into that. So if we can be cognizant of that as we develop these processes.
Anyone else? Yeah, Rob?
One quick question. How long have we had Amanda system, and how does it compare to?
How long is a piece of string?
Yeah, exactly. And how does it compare to other jurisdictions? Are they using the same software? Is it one of the better software programs out there?
For the length of time, to be honest, I'm not sure.
It's a long
I know
time.
it's been a number
20
of
years anyway,
years.
more than 20
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, probably early 2000s, we adopted
Okay.
Amanda, and we did a very detailed exercise whether or not that was the appropriate software moving forward.
Okay.
So we reviewed a whole bunch of different municipal software, Tempest, Amanda, and there was a 30 enterprise piece that I don't remember what it was. And at that time, for our business function and development services, Amanda was the best product. It was highly configurable. When you configure, you modify, you need in-house expertise. Because we had it for so long, we did have some in-house expertise. So it was deemed to be the best product for the suite of business units here at City Hall that are using that software.
A number of cities do also utilize the same software. So I believe City of Surrey as well as City of Dublin both use the same software.
Which also helps phone them if you have an issue or something.
That was part of the process. We interviewed them to see whether or not it was
How do I do
the
this?
best piece.
Yeah.
I will say that today it's probably a little bit outdated, but we are going right now as we speak about migrating that to the next version of that software, which will give all of staff some additional capabilities, including my team in planning and Trevor's team.
Thank you. I see you there, Vijay. Just a quick question on this note. I know that City of Surrey and City of Vancouver did a project about 3 years ago where they were looking at business and they were using 2 different systems, but it essentially looked at the same type of business process improvement. Do we know anything about that? And have we used any of the information from that to help this process?
Yeah, so part of the Nielsen review that was conducted included visiting other municipalities such as City of Surrey to get feedback on how they were using the system, some of their best practices that we have.
Awesome. That's great. Vijay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the compatibility of Amanda with what you're trying to achieve. So thanks for asking and answering that question. I guess my other question is the timeline to upgrade the software and the cost. I read through the reports and it sounds like the system itself isn't going to be 100% capable of delivering what you're looking for at the end of the day. And so there's going to be some add-on software by the sounds of it. And also it's not really clear on whether that cost is high or moderate or low.
So right now we're utilizing the UBCM grant funding to restructure our building permit folders through that D3 project. So that D3 project commenced on the 31st of May with the first phase focusing on restructuring our folders as well as a direct integration to our document management systems. From there, in our second phase, we're going to be looking at implementing the mobile inspection technology, as well as online portals for plumbing and fire sprinkler permits. The phase 3 would be focusing on website updates for our customer-centric services on our website. Phase 1 and 2 are anticipated to be captured within the UBCM funding that we're hoping to have, or we will be completing that by August of next year as part of the deliverable. Currently with the D3 project, we're anticipating early in the new year that we updates.
That's great, exciting.
Well, further to that, will we be able to have like almost like a complete digital application? And like by the time this whole initiative is put together, I think we chatted about this before, but maybe just remind me, is the hope that we can get everything digital from that point? Like I could go on and I could I could submit a complete building permit application online.
That is the way that the industry is trending, is towards full digital applications. At this point in time right now with the D3 project, we're focused on first restructuring, because we're keenly aware that as we move everything paper-based right now, if we tried to go to a digital application, we would lose a lot of our tracking, because we just don't have that built into the system right now. By the end of the D3 project, we would have our plumbing permits and fire sprinklers completely digital at that point in time. The building permits are not within the current scope to switch those to digitally, but that is an opportunity we may look for down the road that we would approach council with.
I think the goal here with our software is to build the foundation that will allow us to move in that direction, but we've got to bite this off in manageable kind of pieces. So the D3 project is the first step with the simpler type applications. Once we get all the wrinkles ironed out there, then we see if we can expand that program. Yeah. I think the other important part in terms of technology to understand is that Trevor, I think, is building a culture of continuous improvement in the division. And that's something that we're trying to do as a city and in other divisions as well. So we know this is just the first phase, but as we move forward, there'll be other opportunities, and we hope to take advantage of those as well, and really build this kind of philosophy that we're always trying to improve and always trying to build and look to the. Yeah, no, I think you guys have been doing a great job at doing that, right? Just seeing the amount of consultations and like the increase in the amount of educational forms that you're putting together at the building department. I think it's a great way to capture the whole building industry. So, good job.
Perfect. I'm going to just check with some who are online that I haven't heard from. Anything from you, Mark? Oh, did we lose?
No, thank you. Well, maybe just a thought that came up is, when you mentioned a little bit about the details of the software. So is there any thoughts about integrating that with, when you think major project with BIM?
As not something that we have considered at this point in time. When we get to those future steps after we've laid this existing foundation, we'll be evaluating and looking at what different opportunities or what collaborative tools would work best for us in order, and for the customers, I should say, of how we're going to deliver our services digitally.
Okay.
That's good. Shane, anything from you? Good. Ron?
No, nothing for me.
Good. Carol?
Great presentation. I understand a lot more than I did before I came in. Just a question in terms of moving towards complete digital online applications. Maybe the city can just be mindful that there are lots of people still out there that aren't very able to use technology or have access to technology as well. So perhaps there can be some thoughts towards still having some type of paper process or wanting to apply that just aren't able.
I think also just one thing I was reminded of with, this is going back many years, but I know through UDI, they used to do the Developer 101. People would think that they were, at step 10 of a process and they hadn't made an application yet and didn't have all the paperwork together. And so, the expectation, what's the reality expectation? And I know dealing with individual homeowners versus sophisticated developers is a different thing, but sometimes it's helpful too to ask the question about what is it that people want to know or what don't they know? Because you don't know where they're starting. You have no idea what it is that they're thinking they want to do and what step they're at. So that's sort of like how many steps are there in this? And are you even ready to begin? Like, how do you get ready to start? Is a very basic thing. And it helps too using plain language, not complicated language. So those who either don't have English as a first language or they have other issues cognitive issues, is really helpful so that, even the most basic can be understood. And that's still good for the sophisticated developers because it's really clear and it's really plain and you have that in place. So, I think this is just, this is really exciting work. It's, some would say it's a no-brainer. It should have happened a long time ago, but the fact is we've been dealing with it a long, long time. And the UBCM grant, I think, even acknowledging that was something possible and that we were able to apply for it and be able to do this work, I think is really important. And the input we've had from industry and others to help guide us, I think is super, super important. I haven't heard from you back here. Any comments, questions?
No, just, I guess maybe even some other context as well is, there has been a couple of, that have come along that give some speed bumps, one being COVID and the other being, of course, the flood. And so some of these initiatives we were anxious to be on a little sooner. The UBCM grant was very helpful, but the other thing we have to be aware of, we've got staffing challenges, as most municipalities do. But we've also had the whole flood response, recovery, and now building forward on that. So I really give a tip to our staff, the hat, because they have been working overtime in many instances. So all these things have been happening while we still had record building permits and things like that. So we're well aware, and I think sometimes the public's expectations and their demands are maybe a little bit more challenging than what than what we can offer. And so, knowing full well that our heart is in it, but there's been a few challenges. And so, kudos to staff for some of these things have happened with all of the other stuff going on in the background. Some of it was in the foreground and this was going on in the background. So, so thank you for that. And just it sort of gives context so that when people love to complain, we get it, but we are in essence a business as well. And it's to work with developers because that's what builds our community. So thank you.
Anything else? Okay, that's great. So we have the motion's been moved and seconded. I'll call a question. All in favor? All the way around the table. All good to go. Thank you very much. Next up is member roundtable. Anything for the good of the cause that anybody wanted to share? Oh, okay. Next meeting is July 28th. You're here before we know it. So with nothing else, then I'll look for a resolution. Thank you, Ken. Second, Rob. All in favor? Thank you. We are adjourned.
Okay, thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Ken. Bye, everybody. Good to see you, Shane.
Bye.
Mark, thank you.
It's going well.